When Paul began thinking about doing this show, the first audience he thought of reaching were advisors who were just starting out or thinking about coming into the field. An important thing to consider and understand when it comes to becoming a financial advisor is what your typical day-to-day on the job truly looks like. Today, we look back at what advisors Brooke Hourigan, Scott Panza, Joe Bogardus, and Brian Ward had to tell us about what a day in the life of a financial advisor is truly like. This is Paul Blanco's Small Steps, Big Wins. Financial planner with Barnum Financial Group, Brooke Hourigan.
Where do I start? Well, let's start from the beginning. How did you end up in the financial service career?
I think probably like most people, I kind of fell into it. I was graduating college and I was kind of looking around and I met a gentleman from another firm who was really known for providing good training, getting licensed, all that sort of stuff. So I was kind of weighing my options. It was a commission deal plus a base. So I was kind of weighing my options, looking at different firms to go to, different industries as I was graduating college. And I said, you know what, let's take a flyer on it. I can at least live on the base. And if I make some commissions as a bonus. So I got licensed, studied for the Series 7. When I passed the Series 7, it was kind of an interesting time where I was driving home from the test. I was super pumped. And I had a sunroof at the time and I was opening the sunroof and I was like thinking, wow, dollar bills are just going to like fall from the sky, right? Like I have my Series 7. This is awesome. Obviously that didn't happen. And it was a tough go for the first few years in this business. I think anybody that you talk to will tell you that. And just trying to get clients, being so young, that was a big, the first thing they would say. I had one guy when I walked in the door asked me if I graduated high school. So I was like, yes, actually I did. And my parents would be really a little annoyed by that comment, considering they just paid for my 4 years at school. So after that, we got good training and all that. We just got to a point where it really wasn't working out. So I cleaned out my desk at that point. I had like one picture on the top of the desk so I could leave at any moment. And nobody knew that there was nothing in the drawers, but there wasn't a speck of anything else in the drawers other than one picture on the top of the desk. And I was debating on what to do. And, so I decided to take the LSATs and I figured, you know what, I could go back to law school and I can at least get another degree, kind of bartend my way through law school and make a few bucks. And then my colleague at the time ended up talking with you and came over, had a good conversation. I think you'll say that I beat you up a little bit or something.
You were, for someone that had their desk cleaned out, I never knew that part, but for someone that had their desk cleaned out, you were pretty hard on me. But I think rightfully so, right? You were right at a point in your life, in your early career, where you were questioning, is this the right business for me?
Yeah, I think a little disillusioned by the business. I think, getting clients back then was pretty difficult. I think now it's just a different dynamic and it's difficult in a different way. But back then it was, picking up the phone, trying to get people on their home phone number, trying to get warm leads, which were very, very difficult to get, kind of the Glengarry leads here, everybody was like chomping at the bit when some good leads came through and stuff like that. So, it was really a slow grind back then and just trying to continue to build a client base in, like a more of an old school environment.
Yeah. So was there when you think about back then and you're reflecting on that, was there a turning point that you hit and you said where you woke up at some point and said, this is for me and this is my career and for all the reasons you came in?
I don't know that there was a turning point necessarily. I think people say like 3 years in the business, 5 years in the business, they kind of give these milestones. So you get to like 36 months and you're waiting for some like lightning bolt to hit and it like be easy. I didn't experience that at all. 5 years, I would say no. I'd say maybe 10 years in the business. Like I felt comfortable. I didn't have to worry about where income was going to be coming from. I had a nice residual roll going at that point. So I felt pretty comfortable. But yeah, I wouldn't say there was any particular turning point. I will say though, you have to be a little like off to be in this business. Like I heard somebody say like only crazy people, like certain personas do well in this business. And I would definitely agree, I mean,
Okay.
I think you just have to have a little bit of different perspective on things. I mean, certainly risk, right? I mean, if you talk to anybody and tell them you're in a 100% commission-based business, they'll immediately tell you you're crazy,
Yep.
right? I never really looked at it that way. I grew up in a family business. We always had risk with regard to income. So I didn't really see it that way. I saw it more, the flip side of that coin in terms of opportunity.
How has your mindset shifted on a day-to-day basis?
I would say probably COVID kind of changed for me. I would work pretty late in a lot of hours. So, getting home at 9 o'clock, multiple days a week would be the norm. I think COVID really was a good thing for me in terms of the business to get to a shift. I see a lot of clients in person. So when you multiply the number of clients in person times the number of hours in a day, it can easily get to a pretty big number. Yep. So, shifting to doing some appointments online, through a Zoom platform or Teams or any of those sorts of platforms, FaceTime, et cetera, or on the telephone, a lot of clients were open to that and receptive to that. So that was a good switch for me to kind of condense the day and kind of work a little bit smarter as opposed to a little bit harder. So I would say, the cliche of the work-life balance at this point for me is much, much, much better.
Great. That's
I don't believe in
though.
work-life balance. I just that's another thing too. There's no such thing in my opinion. I've read a few books with regard to the fact that there is no such thing, and you're leaning in on one or the other. And I think that you have to make a conscious decision at different points in time to lean in on different areas depending on what's needed. And I think the concept of being perfectly balanced between the two is really a misconception or setting yourself up for failure, because I just don't think it's the reality of how life works.
Financial planner, Scott Panza.
Was there any challenges that you faced early on that, you look back and said, I was able to fight through this and it was helped me to grow?
The business as a whole, it's a hard business. It's a remarkably hard business. And honestly, one of the hardest things that I found in this business is almost helping to get clients out of their own way. Yep. And to realize that there is things that they can have help with, or they should get help with, to make sure that they're in the best financial position moving forward and that their family's protected, and really helping them to understand that is very difficult at times. That, and on getting people to pick up the phone, that is getting harder and harder each and every day. And that's what we do. That's how we used to dial for dollars.
Yep.
And still do, for that matter. So just getting people to pick up the phone, where's that next appointment coming from, used to be much harder as well, because we didn't have the great programs that we have now. We did to some extent, but not as many and as just abundant as they are today. So trying to find where is my next appointment coming from was also a huge challenge that I had in this business.
Yeah, which is another challenge that advisors have to figure out. And you did, obviously.
So, a lot of trial and error.
Yes. If you think of our audience, there's brand new people coming into the business. And then there's a ton of experienced advisors that are out there. So let's start with the new person. If you were brand new Scott Panza again today, what would you give yourself as advice to do that would have maybe sped up your thing, or just made it a little less hard?
Honestly, I would say just keep working. It's a numbers game. The more people you talk to, the more likely you're to get that yes. And just always remember that, and just have no fear with it. Someone says no to you, you're in the same exact position that you were in before you had that call, except now you have an answer. You have a no, and you can move on to the next person to find that yes. And that's really what it's all about, is just keeping your head down, doing your job, and working as hard as you can.
It's funny that someone showed me a book the other day, and you got this when you first started. It was called Red Letter Language by Howard Wright. Yeah. And I said, did I ever tell you the dog story about Howard? And I won't belabor this, but, I was in the audience and he said, what happens when the doorbell rings? Does anyone have a dog? And everyone raised their hand. He says, what's the dog do? Go to the door. Is it ever for him? And the answer is no. So he said, don't take it personal, right? So you just kind of said that in your own way. So it's kind of funny that just happened on Thursday. The next question is, fast forward today, top producer, you have a long way to go where you want to get to, but, top 1% of the industry now. What advice would you give that top producer that has kind of hit that ceiling of complexity now and then looking to break through? What would you say to them?
I'm going to steal something you said at one point. If
Please.
It's not broken, break it.
It's awesome.
I never understood that until fairly recently, where you have to be ahead of the curve. And just because something's working now doesn't mean it's going to always work moving forward. And like I said, actually being able to understand that and has helped me take the next step and helped me break out of my own comfort zone and be uncomfortable and try new things that I wouldn't have thought I would have done if you had asked me 5-10 years ago.
Financial service executive and financial planner, Joe Bogardus.
When everyone starts, there's I call it, some people say it's a turning point, but I say it clicks, meaning you wake up one day and you say, hey, this is my career. Because in the beginning, you might be nervous and you're not sure.
Right.
Was there a time that happened? Is this something that you could reflect back on, or was, did it just, you got in and just took off and you felt like this was mine?
Definitely did not take off. It was a slow grind. I remember coming to your office early on and saying, I remember the line that Tom Brady said, hey, this is going to be the best decision. I don't know if you remember that.
I do.
When I came in, I had contemplated quitting this job quite a few times. My father reminded me, Bogarduses are not quitters. So we don't quit. We may fail, but that doesn't mean you stop and you just keep on plugging along. So I grinded out very hard. I think I was remembering, and I'm trying to, now that I have a team, I'm, talk to the young guys about putting hard work and effort into things. And you have to put time and effort into it. This is not a 9-to-5 job. It is not. And especially in the first probably 5 to 7 years of your career, it's really a 7-day-a-week job, because Monday through Friday, you're working. Saturday, you're doing work on the phones and dialing. And then Sunday should be the day where you're studying, getting your licenses, getting those things that you need to be prepared, professionally to take that next step in your career. So I enjoyed, the studying aspect of my just journey. And I think it was actually very, very important for me to understand all these things, because there's such a high learning curve in this business. You need to know a lot.
I believe you have 4 different designations, correct?
Possibly 5. I don't, but yes. I mean, and you just get it done. Testing came a little bit easy to me with these things. So it was something that I just needed to do and just kind of challenge myself and get it done. I remember a week before I was hired, Joe Lopresti was, I remember when we were getting in the hiring class, you were encouraging everyone to get their Series 6 and their life and health. And I was like, I'm going to take the 7. My college roommate at the time was taking his 7. And we were kind of like challenging each other. He ended up getting a 97 percentile on his test. That's like only 4 questions wrong. I did well on it myself, but not that great. And then I'm a week away from getting, starting into this class, and Joe Lopresti, my manager, goes, hey, Joe, you're a smart kid. Why don't you take your property and casualty license? I'm like, I only have 4 days to study. Got it done.
Nice.
Got it done and just did it. Probably don't use that much. Give that to the PNC people here, and then, slowly chug away at the little designations. The certified financial planner, CFP designation, is probably by far one of the best things just to understand this business. Yep. And I highly encourage young people and anyone in this industry, if you want to be able to help people, you need to know what you're talking about.
Yeah. What was some of the challenges you experienced, in the middle of your career, or the early part of your career, that, you look back and you say, wow, it was hard, but it's not as hard as I thought. Was there anything that came to you?
Great question. Everything's difficult in this business. There's not a single thing that's easy. I mean, and challenges are there every single day. And in fact, when technology gets better, things get harder, right? We dealt with some issues internally with some of the programs that are changing on the insurance platforms that took our team back a little bit, but we're trying to figure it out. So I think it's more of a question of how do you face adversity more than anything. You're always going to face it, and you're going to moan and complain. That's natural, normal, maybe even sometimes get angry, but you got to figure out a solution. And
you always won too.
Yeah. My high school coach said, winners find solutions, losers find excuses.
Yep.
It's a big deal. And so to answer your question, I think just getting in front of people, it took time for it's like a slow drip. It takes time to build this business. I mean, there's 20 other advisors that are doing more business right now. There's probably 5 that I don't want to say I'm gunning for it, because I think they're going to continue to grow even bigger, but I'd like to get to that platform, and I think I can. So there's hurdles. So I question to myself, I go, what do I need to do today to get me there? And I think there was a seminar or something, a resource here at Barnum that mentioned there's going to be times where you hit roadblocks. How do you get from one level to the next? And there's always a roadblock. One of those things being staff. Yeah. How do you get the proper staff in place that work together and expand upon that? As luck had it, the other day I was on a phone call with a prospect from transitional planning. It was an advisor, retired advisor, didn't do any life insurance planning, worth, I think, $30 or $40 million. So you never know who you're going to talk to.
Sure.
And we were just, BSing on the phone. And he was saying, one of his challenges was to grow his business was, you never thought you're going to be a business owner. I can sell and talk to people, but how do you build a business like a doctor's office?
Yep.
That's the key, I think, and doing just the patient to patient stuff. And how do you get rid of, the minutia, the inner voice? And it's tough because you have to focus on that. So in the beginning of your career, you're really focused on that other stuff, and you're not in the $500 an hour production stuff.
Well, it's interesting. And to your point, you used the word entrepreneur earlier, right? But if you think about it, you're correct. You get in here, and as you said earlier, you have to study, learn, figure out how to get clients and build a book.
Right.
Then you do that. And then we say to you, okay, now you have to switch from listening to us as an entrepreneur to be a business owner. Now you need staff so you can do that, maybe a junior or 2.
Yeah.
Then you go to the next step where you become an entrepreneur. And now you're managing a whole team, a P&L and all that. And then the next step is, and you're at that break point now where you become the CEO of this business.
And it's so challenging.
Yeah. But that's the great part about it. And the cool thing, I think, Joe, is it's a staircase. Right. It's not a line. If I was drawing here, and you can't forget the things you did at the bottom of the stair that got you to the next step, and this next step. And too many people, that's where they don't break through. And I call that the ceiling of complexity, when you get stuck at it and you have to look backwards, forward, present, and then figure it out. And people always do, like you, that are truly entrepreneurs.
Financial planner and wealth management advisor, Brian Ward.
You have like turning points in the career. I would say coming to Barnum is a turning point, clearly. You also have these other wins that provide like wind in the sails, right? And every time you do a presentation, you're getting feedback. Did you find it helpful? Would you like to have a conversation, right? People are sending us pictures of themselves on fishing trips on Global Relay. Of course, it's text message on Global Relay. Okay. It's not, in case Debbie's listening. There's these little wins that aren't always, you're adding a client. It's seeing that the clients are viewing you as a real partner in what you're doing. And that's really part of the fulfilling, part of the job we do.
What are some of the challenges you guys are facing right now?
So some of the challenges are hiring for seats that don't exist yet. Right. I mean, we've got some part-time help. We have full-time help with running the business and doing the client service. And now the next steps are going to be, and this is where working with you is very helpful with the bigger picture, what's next, right? What's coming down the road for us is hiring in advance of any capacity limitations, hiring in advance of the growth getting stale, so to speak. And so that's the big challenge, right? Within the business would be strategically making hires and looking at our team as an enterprise versus a team.
Yeah, I always try to use the analogy of you're an advisor and now you're trying to build distribution, right? And you're trying to go out and distribute products to more people and more efficiently. And that's the next step for you. So the other thing is what Brian just said is a pretty cool one is you have to be very careful. I always say, don't get crushed by the weight of your own practice. So you have to plan ahead. So you're thinking out now 3-4 years of what you need in terms of the team and the growth of the team as the leader.
Yeah. And it used to just be week to week.
Yeah.
Right. When you're a solo advisor, solo practitioner, you have some help. Your planning is a lot different.
Yeah.
And now we're thinking, okay, so 6 months out, what do we look like a year from now, 2 years from now? What do we look like? And we're starting to make some planning decisions around that end. And, the ultimate idea here is we want to impact as many people as possible. If we're all being inundated, because as I mentioned, you're making promises to people. So somebody's hiring us to be a fee-based planner. Somebody's hiring us to manage assets. Like that is an ongoing conversation that doesn't stop. It is every 3 months, every 4 months, ad hoc in between. It's all the time. And so to your point, you don't want to get crushed under the practice, right? You have to hire more people and you have to put them in a position to be able to fulfill some of the demand, right? And make sure that everybody is handling, their oar in the boat, right? And that's not just from me to Nick and Dan. It's to anyone else on the team who might be in a service related role or in a business development role or in a practice manager role.
What was your mindset like, when you got here versus what it was when you started the new year this year?
Yeah, so the mindset when I got here was whatever it takes, right? There's a zero option mentality here. I've just made a massive decision. I've got a wife, Nancy, who stays home with our children. We have 2 young children. There wasn't any room for, I'm saying there wasn't any room for error, but there was marginal room for error, right? And it was high leverage and we wanted to have the vision come true, right? I mean, it was super exciting and energizing talking to you around what could that future look like and the ability to execute on it. I had high conviction in. And so the mindset was whatever it takes. I know Tony Maiulo said, the burn the boats anecdotal story. That's very much similar to what I'm talking about, right?
I had to make him tell me the whole story.
Yeah. And really it's a good one because you can't have like a safety net, right? If you have high conviction in the ability to execute on the vision, then you just have to do it, right? It's one step in front of the other and it's, working through the uncertainty, right? Now we're looking at becoming a prominent team in the firm, right? Which is growing to be a national firm. We're looking at, what's it going to take for us to be recognized in Shook Research, to be a top advisory team in the country. These are the things that are on our big board of the vision now, which is in complete, it's completely different than 5 years ago.
Yeah. A typical week for you in your old world was how many meetings would you have? How many client meetings would you have a week on a normal week?
Yeah, between review calls and new introductory meetings, we would have anywhere from 15 to 20.
Okay. And now what is that? What's it look like today?
We're hovering around 40 on most weeks, sometimes as high as 50, not really ever beneath 32, 35.
Yeah. And so from a capacity standpoint, how does that work for you?
Yeah, there's still room to fill the capacity.
I love it.
Because we're hiring out more help, right? And with more help behind the scenes, it'll free us up. Those are just my meetings. Nick and Danny are also now taking meetings. And so you think about the scale of the impact. It used to be me, 15 to 20 people a week. Now there's collectively the 3 of us on the team that are client facing. And, collectively we'll probably in very short order be in front of maybe 75, 80 people a week.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So the law of large numbers is definitely playing in your favor. Thank you for listening to Small Steps, Big wins. Please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Every bit helps. You can also follow us on Instagram at Small Steps, Big Wins.
All opinions expressed by the program participants are solely their current opinions and do not reflect the opinions their respective parent companies or affiliates or the companies with which the program participants are affiliated. Investments or strategies mentioned in this program may not be suitable for you, and you should make your own independent decision regarding them. This material does not take into account your particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs, and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for you. You should strongly consider seeking advice from your own investment advisor. Securities and investment advisory services offered through qualified registered representatives of MML Investor Services, LLC. Member SIPC, 6 Corporate Drive, Shelton, Connecticut, 06484, telephone number 203-513-6000.